on JazzFM. This is the Business Breakfast,
where it is 18 minutes past 6. I'm Nick Howard. Thank you very much indeed for joining me. Now, here in the UK, as we've been discussing earlier in the programme, it's the uncertainty of Brexit which is making the business headlines. But as Phil Georgiadis was saying, there are fears of global uncertainty around the world, whether it's reduced Chinese growth, the effect of trade wars and trade tariffs on the US, but also uncertainty in the Eurozone as well. The big engines of the global economy perhaps stalling a little bit. Now, when that happens, as a rule, consumers tend to cut back. Now, what's interesting to me is that the travel sector, however, is particularly optimistic at the moment. So joining me now is Paul Nelson from the World Travel Market. That's the annual industry event which takes place in November in London. Paul, a very good morning to you. Just set out for me what exactly the World Travel Market is, what makes it special, and why it gives you some kind of insight into what's going on in the industry.
Good morning, Nick. Yeah, World Travel Market, as you said, takes place in London every November, and it is the place where the whole industry comes together to have its discussions, do business, and sign those contracts, which in effect are the holiday packages that you and I will be going on next year. So all those holidays that you'll see in the brochures and on the websites that we all purchase and we all enjoy. So the benefit and what World Travel Market offers is that we get to see the trends in advance of the holiday makers going on holiday, if that makes sense.
Now, I'll ask you about some of those trends in just a moment, but you're actually fairly optimistic at the moment. You're seeing more deals being done, more money being spent. Is that right?
Yeah, very much so. So every year we poll our participants to find out the volume of business that has been done at the show. And this year, the volume of business was £3.4 billion, which is 300 million more pounds than it was the previous year before. And we had a record number of participants take place. And a record number of business has been done. And to be honest, in many ways, the travel industry has never looked healthier.
And yet, if you look in the papers, in the stock market, and just at sort of general economic news, there is a lot of uncertainty about. That's a cliche, but in terms of the specifics, even this week we've seen warnings from Thomas Cook. It's looking to sell on its airline. We've seen other airlines go into administration, into bankruptcy. Flybe suggesting that it might not be able to find a buyer for its planes and services, and even TUI suggesting that it's not going to make the growth that it thought it would. There is a feeling that the travel industry is actually stumbling a little bit here, if you look purely at the money that's being made.
Yeah, that's looking at it from very much from a UK perspective and within the context of Brexit. But if you
there are other European world airlines within that, so across in Asia, across in other parts of Europe, but also the Middle East as well. This isn't just a UK look.
No, it's not by any means. But if you look at the actual facts itself, so the number of travellers or the number of trips that we will see this year will be more than 1.4 billion. And that will be the 8th year in a row that it's been above 1 billion trips. And that's 2 years in advance, actually. It wasn't meant to be up at around 1.4 billion, or at least predicted to be that high, until 2021. So we're 2 years ahead of schedule, in effect, from a global perspective. You've got all the economies such as China and Brazil and Russia that are all, they've never really travelled before. And now these guys have got the routes coming in. They've got the tour operators that are going in there, and they can go on holiday all around the world, and they are really, really kind of taking advantage of that. They just like us in the developed world, they really have that desire to travel. And then bringing it back to the UK, it's true that obviously Brexit's had a potential impact on bookings, in the sense that people might be holding off until after Brexit to book. But the picture is very mixed, because there's been a lot of reports this week of companies actually, or people actually booking before Brexit, so going on short breaks and getting them in before the Brexit, before March the 29th. So you're seeing that, and then also you're seeing people booking different destinations. So in some ways there is a bit of a trend at the moment to move away from within the Euro destinations. So you're seeing great business being done for places like Croatia, Bulgaria, Egypt, Egypt, Tunisia, Turkey, all destinations that have been very, very popular with British tourists in the past. But I think this summer you'll see their popularity increase.
It's interesting that you talk about people effectively front-loading their holidays this year. Does that mean that you may see a dip in the rest of the year? Is it a case of people getting their holidays in early and then perhaps spending the summer at home?
I don't think so. I mean, that could well be the case, but I don't think that would be the case. We have such a desire to travel, us Brits, and we really want to make sure we have our week or our 2 weeks in the sun. So I think you'll find people are making sure they get a holiday in before March the 29th. And then I think as we see it unfold and as we understand where we are, I'm pretty confident that you'll see the same numbers of people travelling again post Brexit. We have 70 million outbound trips from the UK, so it's a massive industry. It's 10% of our overall GDP. So it is really a real positive news story.
And there are concerns that if there are worst case scenarios when it comes to Brexit, let's say a no deal Brexit for 29th of March, then a lot of the holidays that people have booked will not be possible just because of even things like the amount of slots that planes will be able to take off and land on. In that situation, a lot of travel insurance companies have suggested that they won't be able to pay out compensation if holidays collapse, but also the holiday companies themselves will take something of a hit. Is that something that's actually worrying you?
It isn't, if I'm honest, because when you hear all of the big CEOs within the travel industry, so Willie Walsh is a perfect example, he doesn't see any of his planes being grounded at all. So I don't think that will be an issue come post-Brexit. It's true that the UK is tied into a lot of European legislation, which has a direct impact on the travel industry, and the travel industry does feel a little bit like it's in the dark on a lot of that, and there's a lot of unwinding that will need to be done. But I don't believe that any of that will actually have an impact on travelling post-March the 29th.
With that in mind then, in November you're back in London for the 40th year, congratulations. But
yeah, thanks very much.
If there are problems, if some of those worst case scenarios do come to pass, will London actually be the right place for this? Will it be actually, something of an error to be bringing travel companies here if we've just seen an embarrassing selection of travel news stories throughout the year?
No, not at all. And I think in many ways, our travel market is a perfect post-Brexit story for the UK economy and UK business in general. All of the 50,000 plus of the senior industry executives will still be coming to London in November, and all the business that the travel industry does will still be conducted at World Travel Market in November. We have no plans to move the show whatsoever due to Brexit. And I think, that, as I said, it's a great success story for London business.
And finally, Paul, just taking into account those headlines that we've been seeing, global uncertainty, whether it's China, the US, Russia, the Middle East, all parts of the world, not just Britain and the Eurozone. Given all that, are you still as optimistic as you say you are when it comes to the travel industry this year and into the next few?
Yeah, very much so. I mean, the travel companies will need to be flexible in the packages that they offer. So, you may find that, as you found following the economic downturn, that more people wanted to do all-inclusive holidays. So they'll need to potentially put on more all-exclusive holidays. So you're in a position where people can control their costs. They may find that they need to move some of their capacity to different countries, etc. But there's a massive desire to travel from all the world's travellers, be it the developing world, as I said, China and Russia and Brazil and places like that, or the developed world like us, regardless of the political backdrop.
Paul, a pleasure to have you on the programme this morning. That's Paul Nelson from the World Travel Market. Now, it is 28 minutes past 6 here on